Assalamualaikum and a very good day. So far we have learned introduction. I give you some introduction to Tinkercad as a Arduino simulator that you will use it for your project, and I also give some explanation about the C programming structure in Arduino, which is it consists of two functions, which is one is setup function, another one is loop function. And before that, I already mentioned also the specialty about Arduino as compared to your computer. The Arduino board consists of many ports where you can connect with your electronic modules such as sensor, motor, and so on. So you can, create your own innovation. And today we're going to discuss more detail about that port. Actually, that port is also called as the Arduino input and output. So in other words, that port can at one time you can assign as either input or output for the Arduino. So Arduino board have input and output. We can then which is the one that I mentioned, which is that the port itself. So we can then directly wire an input or output to any other external component or circuit without having to solder. Meaning that if you see the Arduino board, it's actually I can consider as a user friendly because it's provided with the port where you can directly put the lead of your wire or your connectors, and that connector connect with any external components such as sensor, motor, or any actuator. Then so you can easily make your innovation without doing a soldering process. And this can be done actually by using of course you can use the photo board to do that. Okay, so this is the example of a small photo board. Okay, with this as well as Arduino board, then with of course including all the external component as well as wires, then you can build your innovation without doing some tedious work by having a soldering and things and so on, which is we need to done during the old time before. Okay, Arduino has digital and analog input. Okay, Arduino has digital output that can also be used to mimic the analog output. So later we'll discuss about this. In other words, the port that in Arduino board, okay, you can assign as input, you can assign as output. And if you talk about, let's say you assign as input, the input for Arduino is divided into two. One is a digital input, another one is analog input. Meaning that the digital input, if you assign the port as a digital input, then it can accept a digital signal. And if you assign the input as the analog input, then it can accept the analog signal from the outside. So getting and using input from sensor enable Arduino to respond to or reports on the world around it. So I think I already discussed this before. If you assign the port as the input, it will accept electrical signal or electrical signal changing from the outside. Arduino will accept that. So in other words, the one that suitable to be connect with your Arduino, if you assign the port as the input, is the sensor, because the sensor itself, the purpose in general is to detect any physical changing in environment, and it will convert into electrical signal, meaning that is there any changing, physical changing in environment, the signal or the electrical signal is changing. It will generate the electrical signal, and that electrical signal is also changing. So this changing will be sent through the Arduino port, and you will detect that changing if you are develop some code which is read that the changing or the electrical change signal changing that come from that port. So of course, in order to do that, you need to assign the port of your Arduino as the input port, because it will accept any electrical signals from the outside. So that is one of the example of using the input port of your Arduino. In general, it will accept any electrical signal from the outside, and in practical, the example of accepting electrical signal from the outside is through the sensor, because sensor normally will sense the physical changing in your environment, in outside, and then it will convert into electrical signal, where it will provide this electrical signal through the input of your Arduino. And once your Arduino detected, you will do something that is depend on what you have designed in your coding. Okay, I will give you some example later on this one. Okay, again, this is your Arduino board, and again this is the port that I mentioned before. It divided into two. Okay, there's a 0 to 13, and you also have A0 to A5. As for A0 to A5, this is a special port that you specifically use for analog input. If you want to do something that you required an analog input, then you need to use this port. However, if you want to to design your port, or to make a design where you need a digital input, then you need to use this port from 0 to 13. And let's say if you want to design something where you require digital output, then you also can assign this pin from 0 to 13. So how about the analog output? For analog output, you can use the one that have label as this one, digital PWM. Okay, the one with digital PWM can support analog output. But for digital output, you can use doesn't matter, you can use any of pin from 0 to 13. Okay, so just remind that, meaning that this green can be used as digital input as well as digital output. But if you want to use analog output, then you must use the one with label digital PWM. But let's say if you want to use analog input, and then you must use the one that label A0 to A5, which is labeled as yellow there. So you must remember that. Even I said in the previously that your port can be assigned as input and output, but make sure that you use the correct port, because some port is specialized in analog input, some port is specialized in digital and analog output. Okay, this is some review on digital and analog. Again, I forget to mention about, in order for you to working with Arduino, of course, instead of knowing the programming, you also need to recap back what you have learned in circuit theory as well as digital electronic, because some knowledge from there, we need that knowledge for you to understand how to do a project related to Arduino. Again, let's review back about digital and analog input or digital and analog signal. Again, what is different between digital and analog concept? So digital in computer and electronic world mean a discrete, which is opposite to the analog, which is a continuous number. So again, because the Arduino itself is like your computer, it's a mini computer. So in general, any computer or any computer based application or computer based board is actually communicate by using digital signal. That's why in the electronic digit you learn about binary 010101. That is a digital or we call it as a machine language. So computer only understand machine language, whereby that machine language 0101, the binary number, is in form of digital signal. So it's a discrete value. You can only have 0 or 1, 0 or 1. So that's how computer that understand all the information. Meaning that if you have some signal from the environment, which is in general should be analog signal, then when it go into your computer, it need to be converted into digital signals, because computer or your Arduino board only know or understand the machine language, which is in form of digital signal. So usually the analog domain is a domain that related to the physical measurement. Again, that is like I said before, analog signal is something that related to your environment. So for example, our temperature can have all the value that are possible and that exist. So for example, temperature sensor. Okay, again, like we have discussed before, the purpose of sensor is to convert the physical the physical environment changing into electrical signal. So one of it is a temperature sensor. Temperature sensor will sense the changing of temperature in environment, and it will convert into electrical signal, and this electrical signal will go into your Arduino board. Of course, your Arduino board have like I said, for this kind of application, it will send in, you will assign the port of your Arduino as the input port. And of course, because the temperature sensor provide the analog signal, then you need to assign with analog input port. You must connect your temperature sensor with analog input port, because this analog input port in Arduino has a specialty in changing this analog signal into digital signal. So now it can process the things, because once it's changed into digital signal, then the CPU inside your Arduino can understand what is the value of in voltage that can represent the temperature of the environment. So that is how it's look. You can see that digital signal is the one that we need for making our computer or our Arduino board understand, and because that is the machine language. And of course, in practical, the physical environment in general is we cannot see digital signal, we only see the analog signal. So that's why one of the example is the application of measuring the temperature of environment itself, because the temperature itself is an analog signal, and then if you are using a temperature sensor, it will change it from temperature into electrical signal. But of course, that electrical signal is still analog signal, and then it will going into your input analog input of your Arduino, and that port will have a specialty in changing that analog electrical signal into electrical digital signal. So now the CPU inside the Arduino can understand what is the value of the electrical signal that represent the temperature through the environment. Okay, our case Uno, okay, Arduino Uno. Okay, this is actually Arduino Uno. Okay, this board, the same board is Arduino Uno. Digital signal represent by binary number 0 1. Okay, because again binary number is 0101. And then uh, and it can also represent by low and high. Some people said low is low represent the 0 and high represent the 1. And of course in electrical signal, digital electrical signal in general, 0 is 0, but 1 is actually represented by 5 volt. So meaning that let's say this is digital signal, normally this is 0, this is 5 volt, so 5 volt represent 1. Of course in CPU uh, it will translate as 1. Even you send a 5 volt to the CPU, it actually uh, translate as 1, so don't confuse with it. And of course some of the some of the low power consumption Arduino board, they use 3.3. okay, means that 0 is 0, 3.3 is 1. 3.3 volt is represent 1 in binary. So it's depend on the Arduino board, but in our case we just uh, we just use 0 for 0 in binary, 5 volt as 1 in binary. So that is how we we do it, so don't get confused with that.